Picture this. It's June 1944, somewhere in France. A German reconnaissance pilot soars over Allied lines and spots an entire American armored division below hundreds of tanks, dozens of artillery pieces, convoys of trucks stretching for miles. He radios back to headquarters. Major Allied force detected, preparing for offensive. But here's the thing, almost nothing he saw was real. Those tanks, inflatable rubber, the artillery, painted canvas and wood, the radio chatter filling the airwaves, scripted performances, and that entire armored division. Just 23 men. Welcome to the story of the Ghost Army, the most audacious military deception in history, where artists, actors, and sound engineers became frontline soldiers in a war, fought with illusions instead of bullets. This is the story of how creativity saved thousands of lives and helped win World War II. Traditional military deception had always existed, dummy positions, false radio traffic, but what the Allies needed was something on an unprecedented scale. They needed to make the Germans see entire armies that didn't exist. Enter the 23rd Headquarters Special Troops, officially activated in January 1944. But this wasn't your typical military unit. The Army sent recruiters to art schools, advertising agencies, and radio stations. They recruited from the New York advertising world, from Hollywood sound studios, from the Philadelphia Academy of Fine Arts. The roster reads like a who's who of American creativity. Fashion designer Bill Blass, photographer Art Kane, painter Ellsworth Kelly, who would later become one of America's most celebrated artists. These weren't soldiers playing artists, they were artists playing soldiers. Their mission was classified at the highest level. Most wouldn't be allowed to speak about it for nearly 50 years after the war ended. Even their families had no idea what they really did in Europe. The Ghost Army's arsenal was unlike anything seen before in warfare. At its heart were 4 elements of deception, each handled by specialized units. First, the visual deception. The 603rd Camouflage Engineers operated inflatable equipment that would make a Hollywood props department jealous. We're talking 40-ton Sherman tanks that 2 men could carry, inflated in hoosed 15 minutes using air compressors from 200 feet away. Even in daylight, they were indistinguishable from the real thing. They had inflatable artillery, inflatable trucks, even inflatable airplanes. But the genius was in the details. The artists didn't just inflate the equipment and walk away. They studied how real tank units operated. They created fake tire tracks using special rollers. They hung laundry near false encampments. They scattered cigarette butts and trash in realistic patterns. One officer remembered them debating for an hour about exactly how much mud should be on a fake truck to make it look like it had been driven through recent rain. Second, the sonic deception. The 3,132nd Signal Service Company operated what might be the strangest weapon of the war. Massive speakers mounted on half-tracks that could project sound up to 15 miles. They had recorded actual tank columns, artillery batteries, bridge-building operations. At night, they'd park these sonic cars near enemy lines and play a symphony of military sounds. The clank of tank treads, the rumble of engines, the shouts of officers, all carefully timed to suggest massive troop movements in the darkness. Third, radio deception. The signal company specialists mimicked the radio patterns of genuine units. Every military formation had a distinctive fist, the way its radio operator sent Morse code, their message frequencies, their communication patterns. The Ghost Army operators studied these signatures and replicated them perfectly, making German signal intelligence believe entire divisions were in places they weren't. Fourth, and perhaps most theatrical, special effects. This meant soldiers dressed as officers from units that were actually miles away, driving around in jeeps with the appropriate insignia, asking loud questions in bars about supply lines and battle plans, all designed to be overheard by enemy spies or sympathizers. The Ghost Army's first major operation came shortly after D-Day, in Operation Elephant, designed to draw German attention away from the real Allied advance. Near the Normandy coast, the 23rd set up what appeared to be an entire combat division preparing for an assault. They inflated tanks throughout the Bocuse countryside, set up false radio networks, and drove their sonic equipment close to German lines to broadcast the sounds of a massive armored force preparing to move. But here's what the textbooks often miss. These men were in real danger. They operated within artillery range of German guns. They carried weapons, but their real protection was their deception. If the Germans discovered what they really were, a handful of artists with rubber tanks, they'd have been obliterated. Private Harold Dahl, a young artist from Minnesota, later recalled, "We'd be setting up our inflatables, and you'd hear German artillery in the distance. You realize that if they see through this, if they figure out we're not a real armored division, we're not just failing the mission, we're probably dead." The operation worked. German forces repositioned to counter the Phantom Division, pulling defenders away from where the real American forces were advancing. Hundreds, perhaps thousands of Allied soldiers survived because they faced weakened German positions. But the Ghost Army's greatest performance came in March 1945, during Operation Via Zenda, crossing of the Rhine River. The real Ninth Army planned to cross the Rhine at Vierzon with 2 full divisions. The Ghost Army's job: make the Germans think the crossing would happen 10 miles south, at a different location, with 6 divisions. For this operation, they pulled out every trick they'd learned. They inflated over 600 rubber vehicles. They set up elaborate false supply depots. They flew reconnaissance planes over the fake positions at predictable times, knowing German spotters were watching and would report back. The sonic deception was particularly elaborate. They recorded actual sounds from the real crossing preparations, then played them back at the false location. The Germans heard the distinctive sounds of combat engineers building bridges, armor columns moving into position, artillery ranging shots. The special effects team outdid themselves. Officers from units that would participate in the real crossing suddenly appeared at the false location, their jeeps clearly marked, dining loudly in local restaurants and accidentally leaving marked maps in cafes. For 4 critical days, German intelligence was convinced the main assault would come at the false location. They positioned their strongest defenders there. They moved their artillery. They prepared their counterattack for entirely the wrong place. When the real crossing began 10 miles north, German resistance was a fraction of what it could have been. The Ninth Army achieved its objectives with casualties far lower than predicted. The official army estimate: the Ghost Army's deception saved between 15,000 and 30,000 Allied lives during the war. Think about that. 23 artists with inflatable tanks and sound effects saved as many lives as a successful medical breakthrough might. What makes the Ghost Army story so remarkable isn't just the military success, it's what these men did with their unique position. Despite regulations against keeping journals, many of these artists sketched and painted what they saw. They documented the war not as military historians but as artists. Their work captured something that photographs often missed: the human texture of war, the surreal beauty of a French village at twilight, the expressions on refugees' faces. Ellsworth Kelly painted abstract compositions based on camouflage patterns, work that would later influence his entire artistic career. Bill Blass sketched French women's clothing, insights that would shape his future fashion empire. But they also captured the darkness. Arthur Schilston painted the concentration camp at Buchenwald, which the Ghost Army helped liberate. His watercolors show the impossible horror that no words could fully convey. The irony wasn't lost on them. They'd been sent to war to create illusions, to make false things seem real. But what they found themselves compelled to document was the profound reality of human suffering and courage they witnessed. One artist later said, "We were professional liars for the army, but in our art, we tried to tell the truth." The Ghost Army remained classified until 1996, more than 50 years after the war ended. Most of these men lived their entire professional lives, unable to talk about perhaps the most important work they'd ever done. Today, there's a congressional effort to award the Ghost Army the Congressional Gold Medal. Museums exhibit their inflatable tanks and showcase their artwork. Their story has been told in documentaries and books. But the real legacy of the Ghost Army isn't just the lives they saved or the battles they helped win. It's the reminder that warfare isn't just about firepower, and courage, it's about imagination, creativity, and thinking beyond conventional boundaries. In the end, 23 artists, armed with nothing but inflatable tanks, sound effects, and theatrical skills achieved what entire divisions couldn't. They made the impossible seem real, and in doing so, they changed the course of history, the greatest weapon in their arsenal. Pure imagination.